Oh dear, I'm going to start with a poem.
Too late to change?
Was that a reference to the tie or the...
Yeah.
So this is about from blue sky to reality, really, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes and then talk a bit about the website that went live yesterday and that we can hopefully have a look at here if the technology works. But Louis MacNeice said 80 years ago in 1940, if we could get the hang of it entirely, it would take too long. All we know is the splash of words in passing and falling twigs of song. So a few splashing words and possibly the odd falling twig to celebrate mediation as it is now. Or in fact, not as it is now, but as it will be on the 24th of March 2020, because I'd like to welcome you to the opening of Blue Sky Academy. Blue Sky! Or the Academy of Accredited, Advanced and Appropriate Dispute Resolvers and Peacemakers. And I'd particularly like to welcome our very special guests, Lord Wilson of Culworth, who is Senior Mediator at the Supreme District Resolution Chamber, Sir Jeremy Lefroy MP, Minister for Justice and Peace in the new Centre Green Coalition government. I was going to welcome Dame Jan Coulton, OBE, the Chief Executive of the Dispute Resolution Regulatory Authority, but she's only here in spirit, or holographic form at least. And of course, Baroness Parkinson, without whose inspiration over the last 40 years, none of us would be here. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for coming to visit our windowless basement of dream weavers, or civil servants as they used to be called, our round tables, the cloud-capped towers of our cloud-based data, our flying teams of international peacemakers, and our prophets, unfortunately still only spelt with a PH in the middle. And yes, this is the speech I wrote 6 months ago, because 6 months ago to the day, in fact, I was doing a speech at the Resolution conference in Cambridge, and I was told to do a speech about blue sky thinking, so that's, I'm afraid, why I'm wearing this tie. And the speech was about imagining mediation in 2020, mediation in the immediate past, which has not been a terribly glorious immediate past, and the 20 steps that we might take to get from that past to something that might pass muster as something close to a more exalted future. And my intention in doing that, and it certainly seemed to have caught some imagination amongst the mediation community, was to get a more radical thinking going about how we could rise out of some of the mire of infighting and whatever else has been going on to try to get to a point where we were really thinking inspired thoughts about how mediation could go forward. So really, all I want to do today is rise above the difficulties that the pre-application protocol sometimes bring, the worries that we've all got about the legal aid and punishment of family lawyers bill, and all those other things that are going on. And so let's just dream some dreams for a few minutes. So if I can go back to 2020, you will know, particularly if you're part of this government, that we now have a Ministry of Justice and Peace, and that it has a number of interlocking and balanced and equally funded divisions, including the International Peacekeeping and Peacemaking Division, the Family Justice, Private Ordering and Pre-Relationship Services Division, which Professor Chris Barton is most definitely the head of, and all these other things. And somewhere in there, I'm pleased to say, the cloud of philosophy, ethics, research and development, which is, I think, inhabited primarily by Baroness Parkinson. And how did we get to that point? Well, we got to it by dividing ourselves up into a family justice service, which manages a properly funded guardian service, a properly funded judiciary and court service, but also has a blue sky academy, which is inhabited by these integrated family justice practitioners, or mediators, as we might now call them. And How did we get there? Well, I think it was the judicial riots in 2015 that finally did it for the legal aid bill, when led by Lord Wilson, who, as always, got down, rolled his sleeves up, and started to bring the judges out on strike because of the weight of litigants in person who were coming into the courts. And finally we found, by the Public Funding Restorative Justice and Anti-Globalisation Act of 2017, that we would have non-means tested family legal aid in all entrenched family disputes. So I want to take you to the Blue Sky Academy. You'll see it has a dispute resolution and regulatory authority now, and all these things, scientists, ADR practitioners, prophets, are all in this together, not least the poets, sorry about the poets, musicians, soap screenwriters. I think we realised unless we fund people to change the storylines in EastEnders or Macbeth or Call of Duty to something which really is about peacemaking, then really we're not going to make any progress. And finally we get to our Blue Sky practitioners. And you'll see that there are some collaborative practitioners in there. There are integrated family justice practitioners. There's the pre-relationship services and so on. Where does all this take place? Well, it takes place in our new offices of Blue Sky Academy. Blue Sky! Which has its cloud-capped towers, its flying mediators, its cloud data, and its international profits. And all this space in the middle here is space where there's free from gravitational pull, where we can all have some free thinking, free floating, round table or spherical table discussions around all these issues. Now, that seems to me to be something worth wishing for in 2020, and hasn't quite happened yet, some of it, but some of it has. And one of the reasons it hasn't happened is because I think we've all been pulled down by the weight of the legal aid bill, the pressure on courts, the sense that growth in mediation is really only about dumbing down where we are in the family justice system. And actually, we need as mediators to be dreaming dreams about what we can do and what we can do here and now. So I was interested that Jonathan Gianogli, who is the current, obviously soon to be superseded, but the current Under Secretary of State for Justice, preceded my speech in Cambridge, and his speech was called Great Expectations. I don't think he'd appreciated the Dickensian irony in the title, as he was talking largely to legal aid practitioners. But his view was that there were really 5 expectations of a new mediation dispute resolution profession, and they would be being client-centred, widening access, safeguarding standards, robust governance, and evaluation and research. And actually, they weren't just weasel words. He did unpick them to some degree. And I think we might say over the last 6 months that actually considerable strides have been made nationally to start to address all those 5 areas. So I think we might say things are moving forward. I think I'd like us as mediators, if we are mediators, just to draw breath for a minute and think where we have got to. We've got the government on our side. We've got research and judiciary clear about the benefits of working consensually for almost everybody. We've got mediation starting to be seen as a professional, equal profession within the family justice service. It's interesting. I don't know if, I'm not sure I should say this, Liz, but I'm doing anyway. But Jordan's family law director is going to go live soon, and it really interests me to see. This is going to be an online resource for finding the family law expert that you want. And interestingly, the buttons at the start, I have to say, I didn't see these buttons until we'd actually designed our website. I just want to make that clear before we get there. But the family law directory has got family law solicitors, family law experts, family law barristers, and at the top even, family law mediators. Okay? A sense for once, perhaps for the first time, that there are people of equal professionalism and merit within the family justice system who might be working together. And that felt to me like a really important step to have taken.
It's not an accident here.
Good. Fantastic. Even better. And when's it going live? Do we know?
I've no idea.
Okay.
A movable feast.
Fine. But soon, isn't it, I think? Yeah. So I think you might say, if you did stop to think, that actually there's been quite a lot of progress in quite a lot of these areas. And if Jan Coulton was here, the chair of FMA, as she'd hoped to be, then we might have talked a bit about the current interest in the audit that's being taken of the Family Mediation Council and what's being done about regulation and governance for the future. So there's a lot going on. But I suppose, going back to my Tempest Prospero Island and our great expectations, you're still entitled to say, well, is this about a sea change or is it about a shipwreck? Is it about great expectations or is it, mixing my poets, much ado about nothing? It really is, I think, so unclear. But the great thing is that the potential for the answer is with us. This isn't going to be driven forward entirely by government initiative. It's going to be driven forward by how we operate as mediators individually and within services. So I said back last September that for me, to spirit ourselves from that immediate past to the future that we were imagining, we would need blue sky, not basement thinking. We would need proaction, not reaction to government-imposed initiatives. We'd need organic, creative development through dialogue. And we'd need uncluttered, safe spaces within and outside structures in which we could nurture all of that. And I suggested 20 steps as to how we could get there. The failure of my imagination was I didn't think that we could do it on the ground here. And that actually by taking those 20 steps, which I won't go through now, which range from anything from how we conduct assessment meetings to how we expand our notions of mediation and the sorts of areas where they could work, that we could find ways in which they could all be delivered, not in 2020, but actually in 2012. And I failed to see, until it was pointed out to me by my elders, betters and employers, that we could look at this as a way of developing our own service here in Stafford. And so that's what we've been trying to do. Now, Nicholas was ridiculously kind about me, but there are two things I want to say about that. The first thing is it's not me, it's we, because the reason that the Mediation Centre can grow is because it's got a core which is based around a significant number of support staff and mediators who've worked together for years and have built a fantastic team. And also, it's not about me, because what I'm suggesting we might be able to do here is something which people can do anywhere, or rather, not like this, but how it works for them, how it works demographically, how it works in terms of their own service, whether they want to be a sole practitioner, whether they want to be part of a legal service or whatever. But we all have, I think, the responsibility and the obligation to think of ways in which we can develop our own practice and our own service in lots of different ways. And that's what we've been thinking about how we could do here. So I'm just going to show you a bit about this on the PowerPoint, so that if I show you the website in a few minutes, you won't start thinking this is all to do with the website, because actually it's not. It's to do with how we interact with people. So I'm deliberately not going to go to the website first of all. But the home page of that website looks like that. And you'll see immediately what we've done is to take the mediation core and to say really there are three core services and they all work together, and they are mediation, they are the information and guidance that people need to underpin that mediation, that dispute resolution, and the professional development area. That is, what do we need to make ourselves function better? And so we've and what we've got in the middle is a set which we've called innovation, humanity, and excellence. And we've said, that we have to find ways in which we can demonstrate that in every activity that we do. We've then gone on from there to say, well, let's, in each of these core activities, let's separate them out. So the mediation core will develop into a number of separate activities around children and families, around civil and commercial work, around finance and property, and about the provision of information. And then in the family information area, we've said we need to find ways in which we can address people's needs who are starting new relationships, pathways that will take people through to the court process, information packages and so on. And again, we've subdivided the professional development arm so that we can look at the needs of new mediators, the needs of experienced mediators for a higher level of training, and in what we've called the cloud, an area where there can be proper academic debate and dialogue about where all this is going. And then we've said, we can't do this on our own. We would like to call ourselves a centre of excellence, but we need to be part of a community of excellence. So we've said to people, will you come and join us in it? And we've started to create what we hope is, there you are, if that's not megalomaniac, I don't know what is, that's Stafford as the centre of the universe. But there it is, you saw it here first, and actually it's fairly well near the centre of the universe, isn't it? But those are all our friends, and I'm going to talk about them a bit more in a minute. So, I'd just like to say a little bit more about some of that, and start with the idea that humanity is at the centre of what we do. And I think that means a number of things to me. It means, first of all, we want to say we will put you and your children at the centre of everything we do. Now, that's not just mere words. That's about the process that we help you go through is a process in which you have ownership, in which we will create a model of work that meets your needs rather than one that the court has devised for you or whatever. So it meets people where they are. I think it means genuinely putting the child as well as the adults at the centre of the process. And lots of you have heard me sing, your children are not your children. They are the sons and the daughters of life's longing for itself. And so I'm not going to sing the rest of it, but in fact it's on the website. But really meaning it, that the child is the person at the centre of the process, seems to me actually a step change from what we might have been saying we do till now. What else might humanity mean for me? Well, it means that there's a human spirit that's working deep down, and it's a reconciling spirit. That basically we are gentle, and that basically we are not violent, and that our base human instinct is to find a way of working together. Now, if we mean that, then we might want to move away from a legal process that still, after 800 years, starts people off like that, and start somewhere different. Now, we talk about, in the Family Justice Review, about, it seems to have got lost somewhere actually, but originally, in its aims and objectives, about starting off with the possibility of the court process no longer being adversarial but being inquisitorial. What I'd like us to think about is whether we really would like the pre-litigation environment to be cooperative rather than adversarial. What people do, and research keeps showing us need to do, is to go and see individual lawyers and get individual advice. And that's going to remain the model, provided it gets funded. But a lot of people are going to want to have a different choice. And if actually people started working together, so the point of separation was a point of common interest rather than divided interest, what difference would that make to the services we provide? Well, it might make a difference, for example, to how we provide family information and guidance, because we might want to provide it jointly rather than separately. We might want a model where people who are thinking of separating don't go first to see separate lawyers, but actually go first to something like the Mediation Centre, where they can get skilled options information. So if you want to open your packs for a minute, because we've got this far without opening them, you'll see a couple of the flyers down. They're all colour-coded like on the website. The A5 pink flyer is a family information flyer. So, so this one. Yeah? So if you were, I'd like to think that in Stafford at least, if you were embarking on a separation, you might think about where you would go to get impartially given guidance and information before you think about anything else. You might want to go somewhere that actually could provide you with the choice of either then having independent legal advice or starting in mediation, because of course people are conflicted out from doing both services. And by doing that, you might have an option of actually getting to the door of the court without being that far apart. Now, I think probably very few services can provide that service in a boundaried way, but we can because of the people that we have at the Mediation Centre and at Noel Mellor. And if we pilot it, I think we can develop a model that, as far as the government's concerned, which is interested in the idea of there being key practitioners within the mediation community, we can find a viable alternative for people who want to find a consensual way through these processes. So that's humanity for me. And it also means that where there are impediments to mediation, because families are too stuck to manage it, that we have a responsibility to try and find ways of removing those impediments. Okay? We know that children benefit when their parents work together. We know that some parents can't work together. What do we do about it? We go to court about it. Does that make things any better? Probably not. Might get a result. That might be useful. So we are developing the idea of there being a therapeutic intervention, that we are not calling it family therapy, but a specific therapeutic intervention which enables people to assess whether families can move on and to provide them with limited therapeutic support to be able to do so. We're also thinking about why are SPIPs, parenting information programs, taking place only when ordered by the court, when actually they need to be taking place before courts happen. Okay? Well, the reason is because they're not being commissioned to happen at an earlier stage. Well, I think our view is we can't wait for that commissioning, we need to do it. So we're going to provide parenting groups. People will have to pay for these things until there's another way of funding them. And that might mean that they're not taken up very much. But at least the opportunity will be there. And I guess what interests me most in terms of how this provision of family information and the whole idea about how do you deal with people humanely at this stage is the idea that one might expand the idea of a joint meeting into a pathway or a package which enables the mediation service to manage people's pathway through to divorce in a way that actually works for them together rather than separately. And again, will it work? Well, we'll see, but I think we've got a pretty good chance of starting it. One of the reasons I think we've got a good chance of starting it is because my second core value is that of excellence. And really all I want to say about excellence is that there's a lot of talk about regulation and standards in mediation at the moment. And there's been a lot that's happened which appears to be pushing those standards down. And that won't do. And it will settle somewhere. But actually there need to be services which say whatever the standard is, we were above it. And it's our job to remain above it. And to keep inspiring ourselves to find new ways of doing things that keep us above it. So from my point of view, excellence again is critical in terms of meaning what we say by it and keeping that standard high. We know from our experience so far of the work that we've done that people value the work that we do, that people referring to us value the work that we do, that we are not only excellent but experienced, and we have a degree of expertise. But we have to develop that, we have to deliver more, and we mustn't be complacent about it. An element of that would be, are there other services again which are not touched by mediation at the moment, other conflicts that aren't touched by mediation that could be touched by it? And for me, one of those areas is around complex financial cases, which typically, either because the service provided by mediation isn't good enough, or because there are too many vested interests involved, doesn't get to the mediation door. So we will be providing a number of local initiatives that give people the opportunity to do private FDRs, for those of you who are lawyers and in the know and so on, but opportunities for early neutral evaluation of situations, ways of replicating part, at least, of the court process at a much lower rate, but with experienced lawyers. And we're also looking at how we have a team of mediators that's able to go around the country and provide a high value service to high net value cases. And we're looking at how to do that. And then finally, I just want to talk about innovation. I think we've always taken the view that if somebody else isn't doing something, then we want to do it. And how we would manage to move that forward. And very much the essence of the days that Lisa and I have been running in Stafford the last few years has been, how do you develop your mediation practice without diluting it? What can you take from other practices that would be helpful in any mediation practice? And we want to take that further. We want to take it further, particularly in that whole area about professional development. So this blue area, I think probably is the one that's most important to me. I'm not sure it's the one that's going to make the money, folks, but I really hope that we are going to be able to develop our specialist professional development programs so that there is more being provided to people in a way that that meets their needs. Because what we're constantly being told when we provide training is that people value the interactivity of it, how valuable it is to be able to talk together and share ideas and build from that. There's space at the front, Beverly, if you want to come through. Yeah, it's okay. And so again, in your packs, and I'm not doing very well at signposting the packs, but you'll find flyers to a number of the courses that are coming up. And if you're not from here and you're a mediator or you're from some other profession, you're interested in what we're doing, then we'd just love to see you at things. It'd just be really nice to have your involvement. And I'm interested in the cloud because the cloud for me is not actually somewhere up there. It's a hill in Cheshire. And it's about a vantage point from which you can see the whole landscape of what's around in terms of mediation and mediation development. And I hope that, given that there's not a great deal of academic debate going on in this country around mediation, if I can say that, I think it actually all happens around Lisa again. I hope that there'll be an opportunity for us to develop some of those ideas. Okay, I think I want to finish with the rest of my Louis MacNeice poem, if you don't mind. And then to give you perhaps 5 minutes to have a look at this website, and I'll show you around it. So Louis MacNeice wrote quite a long time ago, "If we could get the hang of it entirely, it would take too long. All we know is the splash of words in passing and falling twigs of song. And when we try to eavesdrop on the great presences, it is rarely that by a stroke of luck we can appropriate even a phrase entirely. If we could find our happiness entirely in someone else's arms, we shouldn't fear the spears of spring or the city's yammering fire alarms. But as it is, the spears go through each year our flesh, and almost hourly, bell or siren banishes the blue eyes of love entirely. And if the world were black or white entirely, and all the charts were plain, instead of a mad weir of tigerish waters, a prism of delight and pain, we might be surer where we wish to go, or again, we might be merely bored. But in brute reality, there is no road that is right entirely. So this isn't necessarily the right road, but it's a possible road. And those of you who are part of the Mediation Centre might like to travel part of that road with us. And others might like to look on and see how it's going and join in a community of excellence. And I'm sure we'll meet more as this community grows.